So I'm such an idiot. I just went online and I just found a blogger who basically listed out everything that the JRE did. And I was like, all right, I'll just reverse engineer this.
Yeah.
And go on YouTube and learn from them.
Yeah, when I started out, I tried like having these two guys come and boom mics. It was a mess. It was like they were high school kids. I remember there was one episode their dad came to watch, and it was my first episode I ever recorded. I mean, it was 6 years ago, but I remember their dad is there watching. He's behind the camera, and I kind of like ran out of stuff to say to this guest. It was my first one. I just didn't know how to do it.
Those are rough.
And he starts asking questions from behind the camera to my guest. That's like on the podcast. It's my first podcast. And I like wanted to delete it because it's so bad, but then I'm like, no, this is hilarious.
No, it's good.
And so now, I mean, I've had on Grant Cardone, Andy Frisella, like you know, I just had the governor of Utah this week, and like,
that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's just like I can get, you know, it's pretty amazing, and it's just funny. It's like that was my first one though,
and it was
that's the beauty.
6 years ago. That's how long you've been podcasting.
Yeah,
that is actually really encouraging. Just to I think about the fact that we've only been in here for how long have we been in here?
Like 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I mean, that's
I
great.
just tell people it's like it's the consistency that's going to make you win. So
Yes.
it's like with my podcast, it's funny because I was probably 30, 40 episodes in, and I had a chance to get Mitt Romney on my podcast.
Did you?
In Utah, that's a big get, right?
Yeah, that's a huge. Anywhere that's a big.
And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, once he gets on, and it was already like doing really well because I had a lot of influencer friends that I'd had on. I had Mitt Romney on. No one gave a shit. It did not move the needle even like a 0.5%. It wasn't even one of my. I think it was my second most listened to podcast that week. Like no one cared, and it hit me. It was like you're never gonna have that one moment that changes it.
Yeah.
Like it's just consistency over time.
One thing, bro, with this particular setup, if you tap it will reverb through the whole thing. I also think that is the best ending to that story you could possibly give because it really does show how little of a shit we give for a lot of these politicians. To them, they are the whole world. I mean, and there was a time when you couldn't go anywhere without Mitt Romney's name. He was in a Kanye song.
Oh, yeah. He was the only guest I've ever had that had multiple assistants watching and, like, making, like, to see what we would say.
Sure.
Like, he just...
Well, because they can't... And, I mean, what was the... So, okay, what was the contract like for the content? Because there's no way they
We didn't have a contract, but his campaign manager was an old friend from college. Okay. And he even... This is funny. Like, even to come on the podcast... He's like, look, Mitt's trying to be the senator. We need 15,000 signatures. If you'll get him 800 signatures, he'll come on. And I'm like, so lame, right? But I had helped a kid. I used to throw all the parties in Utah, and I taught this kid how to throw parties. And he became the biggest party thrower in Utah for college parties and stuff. And he always was like, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? And so I hit him up. I'm like, hey, I saw you have an event coming up. How many people are you having? He's like, probably like 1,500. I'm like, okay, you can call him that favor now. I was like, I need 800 of them to sign this petition for Mitt Romney.
It's a sign-in form.
So
Don't worry about it. Read it.
He really got me like 1,000 signatures in one night. And so I turned it in, and that's how we got it done.
Oh, wow. That's an outstanding story.
Yeah.
Hey, however you get it done, you get it done. And I mean, they knew they were signing a Mitt Romney petition form, I assume. It wasn't...
I don't even know.
Literally like, hey, sign this to get into the party.
That's how much bullshit it all is anyway, right? Like, no one even... I mean, it's a signature. Like, you can't read it. So.
Half the time you sign those things just so people will leave you alone in the parking lot. And it's like, hey, do you want to sign this for... Yeah, fine, go. Great, man. That's outstanding, though. So for 6 years, though, you've been podcasting.
I have not missed a week in 6 years.
Do you do one a week? One podcast a week?
I do 3 every 2 weeks. So I go Monday, Thursday, Wednesday, Monday, Thursday, Wednesday. Like that.
Got it.
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting. Very cool.
Yeah,
so
that way it's like you're getting 6 to 7 a month. Honestly, I just have that many guests. That's how many I want to do. Like, and every now and then I'll wait a week or I'll put out an extra one if I just have... Like this week, I actually filmed 5 podcasts. I just had a killer lineup of guests that I had availability to. And so
that's awesome.
I'm going to the Caribbean for like 8 days. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be gone anyway. So I just, but yeah.
And your podcast, is it still mobile? I mean, can you take it and podcast with guests?
Yeah, I have. Most recent one, I went to LA in the fall. I have a buddy that throws a big charity event there.
Yeah.
And he just stacked it up. He goes, get a suite at the hotel. I'm doing the event. I'll just run people up to your room all day. So I had, Rick Barry, Hall of Fame NBA player, top 50 player of all time. I had Buster Douglas, who beat Mike Tyson. I had Byron Scott, the former coach of the Lakers when Kobe was retired, was part of the
what he was the coach. What coach? Which
the head coach?
He was the head coach.
He was the head coach in the NBA for 17 years. Yeah.
What was his name?
Byron Scott. He was
on
the
Showtime
Lakers.
Why am I thinking that Kobe was the head coach of the Lakers was Byron Scott?
When Kobe retired, yeah.
When Kobe retired. Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
His last game. So,
Gotcha. Who was Kobe's coach? Why am I?
Well, Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson.
Coach,
That's I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, I know very little about this, but I know it was Phil Jackson.
And then, I mean, he just kept running. I had Vicente Fox, the former president of Mexico. Like, it was one after another. He just
Whoa, what was that like?
it was cool. And I speak Spanish. And so when I used to live in Mexico in another life, I was a Mormon missionary down there.
Okay.
Were you really?
For 2
Oh,
years.
is that where? Okay, so interesting. Why Mexico?
That's where they send you. You don't get to pick.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Name goes in a hat and they
Just send you to. I've always wondered how that works.
So when I was in Mexico, he was the president. So it was kind of cool because like I heard his name every day for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting down with this guy and I talked about Trump. I talked about the cartels. I talked about the wall. Like I went into it. It was fun.
I gotta watch that one.
Yeah, it's
How long ago was that one? How many years ago?
Oh, just 4 months ago.
Oh, so it's
Yeah,
new.
just put that
Outstanding. You got to send me a link. I would love to watch that.
Cool.
No, I find so much inspiration from watching other people's platforms, the good ones, people who are doing it well. It gives me a lot of reference on how to structure actual format on dialogue and how to what to look for in guests.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Like you said at the beginning, sometimes if you have to carry the conversation.
Well, I just had it. So this week, one of the guests that he ran up to my room during that was a guy named Taco Fall. You might have heard of him, maybe not. He was the tallest NBA player. He's one of the tallest humans alive, 7'6".
What is his name?
Taco Fall.
Taco Fall. Can you look him up, Andy? How tall is he?
He's 7'6".
7'6".
He's humongous.
Is he far enough? Is he too far from the mic? Bud? I'm just.
Is there any way you can bring that a little bit closer?
Just
But so when I had him on the podcast, he it was painful. I mean, I couldn't get him to say anything right, and I've been holding this forever. Like I don't even know.
Okay, here we go.
There he is, Taco Fall. Yeah, he's 7'6".
Whoa.
But I didn't even really want to put out the
Celtics.
episode because it was so bad. But
Where's he from? Is he
he's
not
from Senegal?
Senegal?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not
Africa.
American.
And so it really was the worst episode. But I was like, I'll just save it. And so since it was NBA All-Star Weekend in Utah, I was like, all right, I'll put out Taco Fall now.
Who's been so far the most interesting guest you've ever had or ever done anything with? I mean, if you could pick one.
Damn. Whew.
I asked that question because when I get asked it, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Everyone is unique.
It really is. I've had all these experts on that in their field. They're so fascinating. They're like the expert of their thing, but you wouldn't know who they are otherwise. I had a few. I'm trying to think. I don't even know. I had a guy on recently. His wife, 2 kids, brother and nephew were all in a car together driving and died and got in a car wreck. That was one of my most fascinating interviews ever. It went viral. I put a few clips out and got 5-6 million views on them just because it's such a crazy story. But so that was one of the more fascinating ones I've done.
Yeah, what he said about what his therapist told him about finding a purpose, not finding happiness.
Yeah.
I had to watch that clip a couple times because I was like, wait a minute. His brother, his wife, his nephew, and was it his sister?
No, his son and daughter.
His son and daughter.
2 kids.
All died in the same car. That's the worst thing I think I've ever heard. Seriously.
Yeah, it was intense.
And that was what drew you to him as a guest? I mean, other than that crazy
story,
just the story. Yeah.
Well, it was the way that he was. So I did a contest. I take my men's group. We do adventure trips every 6 months.
Yeah.
And so I was taking 40 guys to Iceland in November. And as part of the adventure trips, we take one guy on each trip with us that's been through hell, just like that can use the camaraderie, the brotherhood.
I love that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What made you form this men's group?
Are we live, by the way, on the podcast?
Oh yeah, we've been rolling. We do things funny. We do our intro at the end after we've talked, so it's like fresh for me, and then I just throw it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But tell me about the men's group. How'd you form it? What's the meaning of it, and how do you select your members?
Yeah. I did real estate for 17 years, and I mean, it got to a point where my last couple of years in real estate, I was selling 400 or 500 houses with me and my team. And 3 years ago, I sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. It was a $32.5 million house. And I mean, you can do the math.
Wow.
Made almost 7 figures in 20 minutes. And I was at the peak of my career, #1 agent in the county. And I just knew I was actually doing a plant medicine ceremony and just had this total, as clear as day, you're done with this.
A plant medicine ceremony. What are we talking here?
It was like a mixture of
ayahuasca.
No, it wasn't ayahuasca. No. It was like mushrooms with some heart openers and things like that.
There we go. Yeah, okay, so you're doing psilocybin, not microdosing. I assume you're doing a real trip.
Full send. Yeah,
full send. Yeah.
And I just had this. I mean, it was epiphany. It was as clear as day. You're done doing real estate. Like, you need to give more. You need to do more with your life. And about that same time, there was a real estate agent that had died, and I was pretty close to him. He actually got shot picking up rent from one of his properties. And I knew him really well because, I should say we're tied, but I knew him. We ran into each other all the time because we built our businesses the same way, calling for sale by owners. And so, but every article in the paper, every story, it was a huge story, right? But everything was just like realtor, realtor, realtor. And I was like, if I died tomorrow, and the only thing I'm known as is a realtor. Like, that would be sad. Like, realtor's awesome. Like, it was like the best career for me, but I'm so much more than that. And so I started, so that kind of all happened at the same time. And so I kind of started just leaning into it. I was like, okay, well, what should I do next? And started thinking like, well, maybe I can, I want to do these adventure trips. I've traveled to 99 countries now. So I've been all over the world, and I do a lot of crazy stuff, like swim with tiger sharks with no cage and jump off of big old cliffs. And I had this really cool thing I wanted to do where I wanted to, it's in Chile. There's an active volcano. You can bungee jump off a helicopter into the volcano. And so I'm like, I'm in on this. So I'm like, yeah, so I was going to get all my influencer buddies. And I talked to a couple of them about it, and they're like, dude, we're in. This would be awesome. So that was my original idea. What I was going to do next was basically make a documentary, follow our lives, and as we do these crazy things.
Yeah.
And I was talking, actually, a really close friend of mine, she was dating Tim Ferriss at the time. And I really was I was like, hey, help me like with this idea a little bit. Like half of me was just like, hey, let's get this in front of Tim,
Yeah.
But she's really brilliant. And so I wanted her to help me with it. And she's like, Jimmy, they don't need this. I'll be honest. Like I'm friends with all them. Like they
as in the influencers.
Yeah. They have their own worlds. Like they don't have time for this. She's like, you know who would? She goes, who reaches out to you? And I was like, oh. And it was like I had just released my book. It's called You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. It's all about kind of taking the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just kind of play it safe. And, at the end of their lives, nobody regrets the things they did. It's all the things they
didn't do.
Did do, yeah. And so it became clear as day. It was like, oh, all these guys have been reaching out to me, like two same questions they kept asking me. Where do I find a group of friends like you guys have? And the second question was, I feel like I'm stuck in life. How do I get to that next place? And I was like, oh, I know exactly how to do this. I was like, all my friends met through me. Like I just celebrated my 40th birthday. I invited 30 of my best friends. Like I really have 30 best friends. And it's just like, I have this amazing group of humans I get to call my friends. And so I was like, well, I know how to correlate this experience. And so I was like, that's what it's a men's group. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I went from being an imposter, because like when you're thinking about doing coaching, you're like, well, who the hell am I? To tell people how to live their life. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Winging it every day.
Yep.
Still am. And but I was like, as soon as I knew it was a men's group, I'm like, oh, I do know how to help men connect on a deep level and create, deep friendships.
Yeah.
And that was when I decided to launch it.
So these were people who had followed your journey, people who obviously admired what you were doing, were not influencers, I presume.
Correct. Yeah, it was a lot of my friends or just random people on the Instagram, that were people were reaching out all the time. And I was like, now who joined my group ended up being a lot of people that were just, only realtors and people from Utah knew who I was. So
sure, yeah.
Most of my first group was, people from Utah.
Yeah.
Or realtors from all over the country.
How did you structure this men's group? Was there some kind of an admittance fee plus the cost of all the traveling? What was the structure like?
So the way it works is, and we just been going for a little over a year now. We just had our first ever annual event last week, and we had over 500 people there. But so I've got almost 300 men in the program now. But so there's two programs. There's one that's more of a lower ticket. That's that one's $400 a month. And that one includes, calls and things like that, the annual event. And then the other one, it's $1,500 a month. That one includes every 3 months we go on a trip together. We spend 3 nights, I mastermind the whole thing. So we'll have speakers come in. We'll have, at the last one, we walked on hot coals. At the one before that, we jumped off this giant rope swing. At the one before that, I had these military dudes come in and they waterboarded us and tortured us and just crazy shit like that.
You paid to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because online, so many people are like, this is insane. What is going on here? And it's like, we formed it so you could tap out as soon as you wanted. It's not like real waterboarding. You can't tap out.
Right.
So
yeah.
Kind of a problem, And I'll be honest, I was like, okay, I'll just hold my breath. But they smack your gut right before.
Uh-huh.
And have you ever been it's not like when you hold your breath and go underwater. It's like when you've been underwater and you're now out of breath. So you start horrifying. There. Yeah.
Is it true that it's non-lethal? That was what I was led to believe. It was non-lethal. That's why they allowed you to do it.
Yeah, but it can be.
You could die.
Yeah, and I asked my buddy, he was a commander in Iraq of over 1,000 troops, and I said, how many people break? He goes, they all break. It's just a matter of how long you go. And he said it honestly just depends on the person. So some of the toughest guys in my group lasted 5 seconds. Some of the guys that you're like, oh, he's going to last 2 seconds went for like 90 seconds. But it just depends how you can take that form of torture. I literally lasted like 8 seconds. It was brutal. It was, but you know, there's lessons with all of it. And my whole theory with that part of the program is, you know, people get so comfortable. It's like you have an ice bath out back. You got your sauna goes to 220 degrees. Like, you know, it's so easy to get comfortable in 2023.
Yep.
And so we do these things to get us uncomfortable. And when you can jump off a cliff, that's the most terrifying thing you've ever seen, 250 feet down, you're on a rope swing that your buddy's hooked up the day before. Once you push past that fear, all of a sudden making that tough call at work isn't so difficult, or having the tough conversation with your wife to get into integrity, or whatever that looks like, or breaking off that relationship that doesn't serve you and holds you back.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the whole premise of that. But so we do a lot of cool stuff like that. But honestly, the biggest part of my program is the connection piece, just the brotherhood. So
connection to the other members of the group.
Yeah. So I keep it in groups of 50. So there's group 1, 2, 3, and then I'm about to launch the 4th one, because when you go more than 50, it's really hard to keep those friendships tight.
Yeah.
And so we do stuff with all of us together, but the whole premise is each guy in the group really has like 50 best friends in the group. I mean, here's the coolest thing for me. It was we launched last December. So it's a 2.5-year program, but we had our renewals up after 1 year, and I had 48 of the 50 dudes renewed after a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this is an annual commitment, and you had a 98% renewal. That's incredible, man.
Yeah. I mean, it works, dude. It's a phenomenal program. So we're growing like crazy. And got almost 300 members in it total now.
What would you say is the most common need people are trying to fill when they go into this group?
I think there's a couple of them, but one is men. It's not okay not to be okay. There's nowhere to actually be safe to talk about things that aren't going correctly or whatever. And then the second one is honestly just connecting. We as humans are designed to have community, and that's kind of been lost. You know, I mean, COVID, that was my biggest problem. I was pretty outspoken during COVID because I believe, you know, God brings us together and the devil divides, and they did the best they could to isolate people. And there's a lot of damage done for that. And so the whole pandemic was just getting people together. We did poker nights every week. We were, we started this thing called the $100 Dinner Club, where me and 20, 30, or 100, up to 100 of my friends, we'd pick whatever restaurant stayed open, and we'd all go together and we'd have dinner, and every person brought $100 for the tip. And at the end of it, we would give that giant tip to the waitress. And we did a $100 dinner club. Then we started a $1,000 dinner club. I mean, we gave $60,000 tips, you know, I mean,
that's
friggin'
jeez, made that guy's night.
Well, here was the best part about it, because nobody could say shit to us. They were like, I can't believe these guys are going to restaurants, but really hard to come at the guy just gave his waitress a $3,500 tip. You know?
Right.
It was kind of a perfect way to give back and spread good, and also kind of get people together. But anyway,
during the pandemic, obviously with the opinions that you evidently have on the lockdowns, I'm assuming on all the rest of it as well, did you ever feel either censored or concerned that your opinions would, I mean, you got a big platform and they could easily shut you off for saying the wrong thing?
I mean, I was more strategic, because if you just go online, you're not going to change anyone's opinion anyway.
Right.
And so rather than go on and talk about, you know, this is bullshit or whatever, I did it different. I got people together and just shared that. Like, I do a giant fireworks show for my real estate team every year on July 1st. And the year of the pandemic, all the local city ones shut down. There was no fireworks shows, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, the show goes on. And I had built this up. I got 5,000 people to every show for years leading up to this. And I was like, I'm going to my biggest show ever this year.
This is in Utah.
This is July 1st, 2020 in Utah. Yeah. And I called like 7 different cities. They all shut me down. I finally found one mayor in Vineyard, Utah. And she's like, I'm so in. Julie Fulmer. She's great. So I threw a giant firework party with 5,000 people, not one mask, on July 1st, 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was grown men crying, because it was like the first time since COVID started where people was like, oh my gosh, we do live in a country that, you know, has freedom and stuff. And so I've just always been a little bit, that's how I do it. I didn't need to go on and talk, you know, like, oh, I can't believe they just, and then like I had my podcast, I had my platform. So rather than me say things, I had on, if you were to take the 15 loudest voices during the pandemic, I probably had 11 of them on my podcast.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I had Ian Smith, the gym owner from New Jersey. I had Dr. Zelenko, the guy that gave...
You ever had Bedros?
I had Bedros.
Bedros on?
Dr. Zelenko, the guy from... he was the doctor that gave ivermectin to President Trump.
Oh, wow.
I had Sean Whalen, Aaron Wagner, Andy Frisella, Eric Muthos, he did the
so.
documentary. I think it was called Essential or whatever.
Yeah.
I had on. I mean,
who was the professor went on Rogan? I'm trying to remember the guy's name.
Yeah, I didn't have.
He had two.
There was McCulloch, I think.
McCulloch, that's it.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Peter McCulloch. Peter McCulloch. Yeah.
But I had, so that's how I did it, right? And I just let them talk, and so
because they're the medical experts.
Yeah, I mean,
you and I are not.
People. Well, it was cool because, again, it was people like I just wanted it on the record. If nothing else, I'm like I want it on the record that I saw through this bullshit. I stood for something. And it was really cool. So at my event this last weekend, there's a buddy that I have there, and we have a really cool friendship because we do not agree on a lot of things. He lives in California. He's very
I get it.
Different thinking than me. But it was cool because and we fought during the pandemic. Not fought, but it was like respectfully disagreed. Mm-hmm. So I remember when, the vaccine came out and I was like, I cannot believe people are taking this. And he was like, dude, this is the greatest modern miracle we've ever seen. And it was cool because he got on my stage and we're still like, he's one of my closest friends. He got up there and he's like, yeah, he talked about like me and Jimmy don't always agree on things. We tend to fight a little bit on Twitter. He goes, I will say I've had to change my mind about a few things. And I was like, yeah, because I was right from the crowd, It was my favorite part of the whole event because
has he changed his opinion on that particular issue?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, well, that's good. We've seen that a lot.
Stuff. Yeah. It was cool and I didn't want to shove it in his face because I'm like, hey, let them all back over this side,
100%.
But it was, it was pretty bad. Like people made you feel like the worst human alive, and I'm over here like I'm just playing the long game.
Polarized.
I built my whole business, I built my career, I built my real estate game on playing the long game. I was always thinking 4 turns down the road. And what I saw during the pandemic was like, what is the effect in 2-3 years of shutting down the economy? What is the effect of keeping kids from being able to go to school? I've gone undercover and helped rescue kids that were being sex trafficked. I know how much abuse is in the home. Their only outlet is finding time to go to school. And their teachers are the ones that end up reporting the abuse always because it's the only way they get saved. Like all these things that were just being forgotten, right? I had 2 friends commit suicide within the first 3 months of the pandemic. I mean, people needed community. They needed friends. They needed people to go talk to. And so I was just looking, I guess, with a bigger lens.
Yeah.
And people made that out really bad. I don't care. Like, I knew all I had to know is all the people I don't trust are telling me one thing.
Yeah.
Big pharma, the news, the politicians I don't trust, all saying the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to go this way.
Yeah.
And so
it certainly felt that way. It also felt extremely polarized, as you just said. I mean, using the analogy of your friend in California, I can't believe anybody would take this. This is the most incredible miracle ever to hit modern science. There wasn't really anybody in the middle. It felt like everything was, and you and I share the exact same opinions on this. And it's important, I think, to have people around you that don't, so it doesn't turn into an echo chamber. But I think the time over the last few months has really shown the truth on a lot of those issues, especially that one.
Well, I'll tell you something cool that happened because of that, though, because I was about 2-3 months into the pandemic, and Jimmy Rex was not built for a world in a pandemic. I am a world traveler. I am a people person. I'm throwing parties. I'm getting together. And just when people can't see the obvious thing in front of them, it drives me nuts. And I was just like, I was having a hard time with it, And the same buddy, the one that spoke on my stage, he's actually really smart. And he said something to me. He said, Jimmy, happiness is accepting everything as it is and not wishing it was different. And I went, shit. I was like, I have to accept this pandemic the way it is and not wish it was different because you can't change it. So why even be mad about it? And it really changed my whole view of the pandemic. And that was the day I kind of started forming, okay, how can I use this to be a leader? How can I use this to build community? How can I use this to actually make a difference? And that's kind of how Weird That They came about. Like the world, I would have never slowed down. I was just traveling and selling homes. I could have done that for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah.
And I probably would have never slowed down, but because of the pandemic, it kind of forced me to.
Yeah.
And honestly, with that thought, I was like, how do I become a leader through this? How can I help people that are truly, because I wasn't unaware. Like I remember one time I was in a gas station. It was probably, 2 months into the pandemic, 3 months in. And I was on a phone call with a buddy, and I turn around and this guy just looks me right in the eyes and he's like, F you, mother effer, like right to my face. And I'm just like, and normally I have a pretty sharp tongue. I can destroy if I want to. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I was literally just like this pity for this man. I'm like, God, what is going on that he thinks this is okay
to do this to a stranger?
Yeah. That he really, I go, he's truly that afraid. And I had this moment of empathy that was kind of rare for me at that time, I'd say, where I just was like, And I just smiled and went to my car. And if I would have destroyed him, I did that a few other times. One guy tried yelling at me in a gas station once that was buying cigarettes, and I just let him have it. I'm like, oh, really? Now we care about other people. Okay, as you smoke your little cancer sticks into the air for the last 25 years, getting people cancer, and you want to tell me about other people? Go fuck yourself. You know, I was just like going off on him, and I felt so bad after. I was like, why did I do that? Why did I have to do this way? So when this guy did that, and I just smiled, and I just was like, wow, okay. I just nodded my head. I went in my car. And I had the best night. It was like the ultimate win for me because I'm like, I'm growing as a human. I didn't destroy that man. And I probably could have justified it really easily. So,
and a person like that is most likely trying to incite some kind of a response.
They just,
you have no idea what's going on with that guy.
Fear, you're like, what really is going on?
And it really came out of nowhere. He truly just.
Oh, I mean, it was literally. I was on the phone talking to my friend, just didn't have a mask on. That was the whole thing. Yeah, no.
Oh, it was over that.
Yeah. I didn't have my mask on. That's all it was.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I would have had at least one altercation. I really didn't have that much.
No,
well, I had one. One time a guy, I was in a grocery store, no mask, and they didn't mandate it here in Arizona. They never made you wear a mask in a grocery store, so each individual chain had its own sort of policy. And one time a guy didn't work there, but he rolled up behind me, and I saw his cart and what he had inside of it, and he told me, he goes, where's your fucking mask? And I, like you, can sort of spin a narrative in my own favor. I said, hey, you know what, man? I'm not trying to make a thing here or get on the news, but if you're really worried about your health and whatnot, here's my card. You probably shouldn't eat that pizza or half the shit you got in there. If you want to stay healthy, maybe call me. In any case, he didn't really like that. He erupted, grabbed the manager, followed me around the store, and they asked him to leave. But that's really it. I really didn't
have any other... Well, it's such a shitty thing, because it was like, you could just see they were just causing division, and you always have to look like, who's trying to divide people? And that's where I kind of quit being I just decided after that one altercation, I really felt really bad. And I had one in the bank too, kind of similar to that, where I was like, we're going to talk about health. Okay, you're the model of health, lady. But no, and that was, I felt bad again. And I was like, I'm done doing this, because it ruined, it's your energy gets affected.
Yeah.
And if you can take, and like, now that I've gotten bigger online and stuff, and I have plenty of things, I'm sure I say that, I don't even know if I believe half of it. What the hell? It's like, but people will get so mad at you and they just want to come at you, and I'm like, you have to really be able to stand in your own truth and just be able to go, you know what? I'm going to be unapologetically who I am. And you can't let those opinions affect you, because A, you'll change your message, and B, it'll affect your energy. I'm super big on like that energetic exchange.
Look at what just happened with Tiger Woods yesterday. I mean, how demasculated. Did you see that? You hear the story at all?
Tampon thing or
the
whatever?
tampon thing. It was hilarious. First of all, he handed him. I mean, you saw it. He handed him a tampon, but the fallout was embarrassing. There is nothing more embarrassing than watching a grown ass man of his stature and success sit in front of the camera and apologize for offending and all. It's just, you lose immediately as soon as you do that, and you're only going to please half the people that you're talking to anyway.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they keep doing it.
Well, and they're not, usually when people come at you online, they're not fighting fair. Like, you can explain it to them and try to, but it doesn't matter. And so that's where I said, it's like, I don't try to change anyone's mind. I'm like, but I decided last Christmas, it was like, I'm going to give myself the gift of, I'm not going to respond to another troll again. And
that's a nice gift.
Respond.
Yeah. Hear that? No more. Every time someone says I have small legs, we ignore them. You mentioned you went undercover to help get rid of sex trafficking, or get kids out of sex trafficking. How in the world did that happen to a realtor turned world traveler? How did you find yourself in that?
It's funny because Vice actually did an article on the organization. It was called Operation Underground Railroad. And
I've heard of it.
Part of their big claim of like why this organization wasn't legit is because like they have realtors going undercover, coming at me directly, basically.
Why do? I mean, it's awesome. I would do it, but why?
The thing is, so when I first heard about it, it just touched my soul. I mean, I just was like, oh my God, it was a brand new nonprofit. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to go. And the guy that, basically the way that they would do the sting operations, I'm done doing it now. It's been a couple years so I can talk about it. But the guy that was talking that day, he's a high-end real estate guy. He was a partner in a multi-billion-dollar real estate fund. And they needed somebody like him because the whole pitch, the story was that we're building this big hotel and we want to use it for sex trafficking and all this stuff. And that's how they got the bad guys, whatever. I mean, whatever you want to call them. To like
that works.
Buy in. And as he went undercover, so I'm really good at being in the room. If I want to be there, I can figure out how to make it happen. I'm pretty good at that.
Okay.
So I just did my thing, got in with this organization, went on my first op with them undercover. And I speak Spanish, so that helped them a lot because a lot of these stings are in Latin America, Mexico, places like that.
I was gonna. Is this is not exclusively in America?
We didn't do any in America.
Oh,
America,
okay.
they have like real organizations that handle this stuff. Like
Gotcha.
in foreign countries, they don't have anything, so that was us. Like
Really? Like,
oh yeah,
what in Mexico they don't have anything in place to stop child sex trafficking?
So they do, but these Mexicans try to go and get the sex traffickers, and they just know that they're undercovers. When white American rich guys go down, they Mexican people that are in that trade, or the Latin American people that are in that trade, they just get blinded by the money and they fall for it because that's what they're used to seeing.
They think you're there to buy.
Exactly.
You're a customer.
And so
is that the part you played? You played the part of a customer?
So, exactly right.
Okay.
And so, you know, it's funny because when I first talked to the guy, he was like, look, dude, we have 400 people waiting to go undercover. We got FBI, former Marines, like former special forces. I said to him, I know, but you're a real estate guy and you got to go. So I want to go. And, you know, long story short, I ended up kind of just getting in. But he, when we were going undercover, me and him could volley so well because the truth is the military guys were awful undercover. Like they're always on military watch. Like they just have that vibe that they're like way... Me and Paul are just, and you see me, I don't take myself very seriously.
Yeah.
You know, I'm dressed like a jackass, $2,000 sneakers on,
and you look like you have money.
Yeah,
a lot of military guys.
You do kind of have to have people that have had money because they know how to talk about having money. And so me and Paul and a few other guys, we were really good undercover. We could get in any room. And I remember one sting we did. We took down these guys, and there was bad guys, and then there was like evil guys. And this was an organization that was trafficking kids. I mean, this was an evil organization of men. And when we took them down...
Which country?
I don't say.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Just
yeah, probably smart, yeah.
We're not that far from here. How's that? And, no, but... and I
believe you. The market's here.
So we would work directly with the federal police in Mexico. Never the local police. They were always corrupt. But
sure.
In this case, we're working with the federal police. Mm-hmm. And in one night going out, me and my buddies, we got all their Instagrams, all their Facebooks, all their WhatsApp, all their... phone numbers, everything. I mean,
the people selling, the sellers.
Yeah. And I remember we met with the head of, he's the number 2 guy for the federal government in Mexico. And he just was so astonished. He said, I remember he said to us, he goes, I speak Spanish. So he goes, you payasos, which is clowns, got more information in one night than we've gotten in 14 months. He's like, it's incredible. Because we had the ability to go, but that's what made us really good at doing it.
Was just so you're part of this. Where does your part of the transaction stop? I mean, do you literally get in the room with money?
No. So we throw a house party is how we did it back then. And they do it different now, so I can say, but like we would throw a house party 2 weeks from now. And we'd say, look, our buddy's coming down. We're going to bring a bunch of friends. You got to bring all the kids you have. We want all of them. And so they'd bring them into the party. And now we had a controlled environment at the party. We had 40 federal police waiting to raid us as soon as the code word.
Would they really show up with the kids?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they would show. I mean, on average, how many kids are we talking? Boys and girls?
I think I did 11 ops and rescued somewhere around 130 kids in that
Holy
time.
cow.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Seriously.
The better part was, I mean, the people that was cool. We didn't really get to see the kids after, because they would arrest us too. They'd come in and then they'd take us to the airport.
I get
those
it.
Guys to jail. Yeah.
So they would get you immediately out of the country when this little sting operation was done.
Yeah.
It's probably best you don't hang around.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, and just as part of the thing, it was like the story was that we all got arrested, you know.
And so it would. Okay. So then would you ever go back to that same type of location again?
So
and do it again?
I'll say this. We wouldn't go back and do it. I never did. I will say this. We did one place it was somewhere in Mexico. I'll say that. And I was undercover, and we had 3 different groups that we had met that were trafficking. But one of them was this group I just basically talked about.
The evil group.
Yeah. The other 2, in fact, we knew we had the right ones because the other 2 people, when they heard who we were working with, they said, oh, if you're working with them, we can't help you. They run this town. So I knew we had the right people. Well,
is that how that works, by the way? Is there
that time?
At that time, different. It's
geographic
location based on trafficking groups.
It was very rare to find an organization doing it. Usually it was just like some jackass that was like a school teacher, because you have to have access to kids. So it's either a family member, a school teacher, or something like that.
How do they get them? I mean, from what you understand.
So we took down an 8th grade school teacher. It was a lady.
Holy shit.
And she would just tell these ladies, she'd say, hey, I'll give you $50 if you come to this party. I have some friends who want to have a party. And by the time they're there, they rape them or whatever. And so
what age? And again, if it's
12 to 16.
12 to 16 is how old these people were. Holy cow.
But yeah, and anyway, I remember I was going with that. But we so I went, that particular place, we did the op, we took them down. Mm-hmm. That's actually how weird that in my coaching group formed. It was from that op. I'll tell you that in a second.
Yeah.
But we take them down, And actually, so on my way home from the airport, I was telling my girlfriend about this sting. And it was like a big one. And I mean, this was like crazy. They had a perimeter set. They had guns. Like if any part of them knew what we were there for, we were dead, you know. And I'm telling her about it. She actually pulled over her vehicle, my truck actually. And she says, she looks at me and she goes, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore. I was like, well, what are you talking about? This is, did you hear what I said? We just,
yes.
She goes, I know, but it's like super dangerous. You know, it's a terrible environment. I was like, I know, but it's like part of my life's mission now. And she goes, I know, but like, why can't they just go do it? And without even thinking, I said, well, there is no they. We are the they. Mm-hmm. And when I said that, I was like, oh shit. That was my motto for life. So I got it tattooed on my arm. We are the they.
We are the they.
And that's the name of my coaching company.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the whole point of it is like, we don't wait for other people to step up and do something. Like we are the, people say all the time, like they need to do something. I was like, no, we are the they. So anyway, but
that's powerful.
After that op, a couple weeks later, no, it was a couple months. It was about 6 months later because I was dating a different girl. I wanted to go back to that place for vacation. And again, it's a big city or whatever, right? But it's like a really easy resort town in Mexico to go hang out at. And just for kicks and giggles, we went to like the spot where those other two traffickers kind of hung out. And the one guy, he sold like fishing packages during the day. And then he was a trafficker at night. And so I was with her. I've never really told this part of the story. I don't think I've ever told anyone this part of the story. So I went with her and I didn't even tell her. I was like, okay, I'm going to see if this guy recognizes me. Because we only worked with him.
You had met him while...
He was one of the other two there was the three groups, I said. He was one of the other two that we let go. When they said...
You're a madman.
Well, I just was like, I don't think he's going to recognize me.
What if he fucking did?
He would have just thought I was still doing that. And he would have just been like, oh...
Are you sure?
But I was confident. And I wasn't the front guy. Like, I was in the back enough that I knew, you know? And I went up and I started asking about fishing with this girl holding my hand. And he didn't... I was reading his energy. He didn't pick up anything. Like, he didn't remember me at all.
He didn't remember you at all from what happened before?
No.
Man, he's got a bad memory.
Yeah. No, because the thing is, you got to remember, like, we all look the same to them. And I was the guy in the back. I wasn't the main guy dealing with him. I was just the buddy in the background.
Okay.
It'd be like if I saw him 6 months from now, your computer editor dude over here, I'll be honest, I wouldn't remember what he looks like. I'm purposely not looking at him. And I like couldn't tell you. Now if I looked at him and I'm like, oh, okay, got it. Okay, perfect. But like, you just don't pay attention to that.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, that's... I'm glad it all worked out.
Yeah, so I guess
I would not have done that.
I'm not afraid to go back to those places. And
I suppose now it's been a few years, right? I mean, how much time had lapsed between when you had done the operation and went back with your girl? I mean, how much? 6 months. That's not enough time. That's not enough time.
I knew he wouldn't recognize me.
Well, I'm glad it all worked out. What an incredible thing to be a part of. Has that part of your life kind of stopped? I mean,
yeah. So I kind of it felt like it had ran its course. The two guys we were working with. So Tim Ballard is the founder of OUR.
Uh-huh.
A guy named Paul Hutchinson was the one that I worked with. He founded Child Liberation Foundation. And the truth is, it got weird. Like, it got messy. They didn't get along very well. And it really was sad because all of us kind of were the fallout of that. Mm-hmm. And like, to be honest, both of them were doing such amazing work. So OUR is doing awesome stuff. They're still doing their thing. Child Liberation Foundation still does their thing. But I went another direction. I wanted to work with men. I wanted to kind of just change course.
I mean, it's certainly a safer alternative to what you're part of. It's one of the most, and maybe back me up here, it doesn't feel like this is talked about enough. It does not feel like human trafficking and slavery, which is what it is really on anyone's radar as much as it should be.
Here's the truth. Like, I recognize this. So when I started going undercover, because I was like, I wanted to tell everyone about it. Uh-huh. And I'd tell people the story and they didn't want to hear it. It was actually very interesting. It's really hard to tell the story. So we always focus on the rescues or how the victims are doing now when we tell the story, because if you just talk about the problem, people just don't want to hear it. It's the honest truth. And it is a big problem. Like, there's different numbers. I don't know what the real number is. That's obviously going on. It's a real problem. I mean, Epstein did not hang himself. Like,
no, he did not.
There's real things going on. But at the end of the day, it was really cool. It was a chapter of my life that was like incredible. It was one of those things that's like, I had this weird, really funny bucket list for years, and like one of them was like own a penguin or something, and go to 100 countries, which I'm about to hit next month. But one of them was to save a human, save somebody's life, and it was like, felt like that was kind of what we got to do with that.
That's powerful. That's outstanding. Yeah. So what's next, bro? What do you want to see happen for yourself in 2023 for your men's group? What do you got?
I mean, my whole focus is this group now. I've still got my real estate team running, so we closed almost 400 homes last year.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, so it's still doing good. I have the world's best partner, so he just runs that. I send him all the leads.
Is that for you still kind of the bread and butter of your big operation is real estate?
No, I mean, it's still like with him, but like 90% of my effort right now is going into Weird the Day. I mean, so I've got 300 guys in my group now, another 125 women that are the wives and girlfriends that are in the women's section, the Queen Edition.
Oh, that's cool. You have what do you call it?
The Queen Edition.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got now men and women.
Yeah, but I'm
separately
smart enough to know that I'm not a women's coach, and so my life coach for the
Me neither.
Yeah, my life coach the last 8 years. Her name is Melissa. She was one of Tony Robbins' top coaches. Coached for 22 years. She's incredible. She would take all this top.
What's her name?
Melissa.
She'd be an incredible person to get on. I would love to talk to her.
Yeah, she's incredible. And what was really cool is she was kind of coaching me through my whole journey for the last decade.
Yeah.
And when I opened this, she kept on hitting me like, Jimmy, you got to bring the wives and girlfriends along, or else they're going to have a separation. And I was like, I'm not qualified to coach the women. And eventually I brought her in full time. So she quit her other job, came in full time, and she runs the women's group for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And that's really smart. Because we got to know what our limitations are, and I think oftentimes
she's incredible. I mean, every single woman that's in that group is like, where did you even find this lady? Like, she really is incredible. Yeah. She's 62 years old right now, and she just has so much wisdom, and but she's like doesn't take shit from anyone, but yet she's soft and feminine and all the things you want a woman to be, a powerful woman, that's truly in her power. And so yeah, she's the perfect person for it.
How would someone get involved with one of these groups?
So I open the group every couple months. We're actually open right now. We'll probably close it here in a couple more days. And then just follow me on Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex. Whenever we have an opening, I talk about it every day, basically while it's open.
Sorry, bro. Continue. So every couple of months, these groups re-up. You can get new members.
Yeah, I mean I have to keep them in pods of 50 for the leadership group.
Okay.
And so I've got 3 of those groups running. I'll probably launch another one in about 6 or 8 weeks is what it feels like. I just have the demand. I have 20, 30 guys waiting, and so just whenever I open them, we get a new one, and it's pretty awesome, man.
Any exciting locations? I've seen you go to Machu Picchu and all these crazy spots all over the world. Where are you taking the groups? What's your most?
Yeah. So I mean, last year we took them to Iceland, and we took them to the Bahamas. We swam with tiger sharks and giant hammerheads.
There you go.
This year, actually in July, I'm taking 70 guys, and we're gonna go run with the bulls. Going to do that.
Is that in Barcelona? Where do they do that?
That's in Pamplona. So we fly into Barcelona, and then it's about a 3-4 hour drive.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Yeah. So
I've always wanted to do that.
I hired like the company that does it. They're giving us all the VIP. We get to go practice.
You get to be right in front of the bull
and do like the bull, like with the cloth and things like that.
You're gonna hold the flag.
Yep.
You're crazy.
Yep.
You're crazy, man. They got a clown for that. Like that's not. That's insane. I'd run with the bulls. I ain't holding the red flag.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm taking them another group in October to go to Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
And then as part of that, we're volunteering at an orphanage down there. And then we're doing 2 days for those that want to. For those that don't, they stay at the orphanage and volunteer. But for those that want, 2 days of ayahuasca as well.
Oh, okay.
So
see, we didn't really touch on this. You have now mentioned 2 incredible psychedelics in this podcast. We haven't even gotten into it. Is that part of your group? I mean,
clearly you're on psychedelics. Look at this studio. So.
See, he gets it. Bro,
this didn't happen.
True story.
Normal creative mind.
Came in here, took some mushrooms, and I just saw it. I get visual when I do it. I get real creative. That's my process. Yeah. So, do you actually do this kind of stuff on the regular with these groups?
No, so not with the group. I mean, we're taking them where it's legal to do it in Peru.
Peru,
that's the reason we're doing that. But I introduce them to certain things. I mean, it's been such a big part of my journey, right? I mean,
has it?
Oh yeah.
Wow. How? Please explain. Why what has psychedelics done for your particular journey?
I mean, so much, but I'll share my first experience. That's the most common one, like my very first time. And you got to keep in mind, I grew up Mormon, right? I mean, it's like coffee was a known. I to this day have had less cups of coffee than times I've done ayahuasca. I mean, I've literally taken more ayahuasca tea than Lipton. Okay, like
that's great.
Just one of those vices.
You heard it here first.
I don't need to pick it up once I left that church or whatever. But no, so for me, it was a dead no. I mean, I'd never done a drug. I didn't drink alcohol. I mean, I was a really good Mormon until I left that church. I was 34 when I had my first drink of alcohol.
Oh, you did yourself some favors.
I'd been out of that church for 2 years. Oh, it's like the blessing of my life.
Oh, yeah.
Accidentally nailed it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was into my 30s before I lost my virginity. Like, I did the damn thing.
Oh,
I was
dang, man. Yeah.
Because,
continue.
Like, when I say, like, drugs were a no-no, right?
Yeah.
And some people say they're not drugs, they're plants. It's all the same. They are drugs. But
they are drugs.
Yeah. But
They have a purpose.
And so I had a buddy. He's one of the guys I'd go undercover with, and this guy, I mean, his company was just crushing. He's just the best humanitarian I've ever met. Yeah. And he's crazy like us, you know? And that's why we did well undercover together. Of course. And it's my buddy Andy, and long story short, I was at dinner with him. I'm like, dude, we need to go do something extreme. And he's like, well, remember that book you gave me for Christmas, Tools for Titans, and the Tim Ferriss book? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, have you read it? I was like, no, not yet. And he's like, dude, you should come do psychedelics with us. And I'm like, I was pissed. I was upset because I was like, dude, what the hell? I was like, you're doing drugs? And he's just laughing. He's like, dude, I'm telling you, it is life-changing. And this time, my first time was December 7th, 2018. It's tattooed.
You marked a tattoo the first time you did psychedelics?
Yeah, it got life-changing.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Did you
I'll tell you the experience. Yeah. So again, this was 4 months before my first time doing it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But I respect him so much. I'm like, and the reason I was mad is because the second he said it, I knew I was going to do it. This was such a stretch for me, right?
Because you trust him so much. You know he's successful. He's just like you.
I'm like talking to him like, you gotta be kidding me. He goes, dude, I'm telling you, it's spiritual. It'll change your life. Mm-hmm. It's helped me like with all these addictions and things I had. I'm like, what the hell? So I remember I went to his house. It took me 4 months to get the courage still. And have you ever heard of Armand's medicine? It's a bunch of heart openers. So sassafras, white lily, and stuff like that. It's kind of
I've heard of white lily.
So it's like a mixture of different compounds or whatever. It's very similar to MDMA.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, MDMA is made of sassafras oil, basically, which comes from sassafras, and so it's the same kind of experience. But anyway, it's a mix of that and like psilocybin. And I remember it's just sitting there, and I'm just like, holy shit. And I popped it in, and
was it a tablet? It was in a capsule.
Yeah. And about 45 minutes later, I was like, oh, my life will never be the same. And I felt it. I mean, it was just right there. And so I'll tell you what happened that night. So when I was 14 years old, I was a huge baseball guy. My whole family was in baseball, and my dad. My older brother, Matt, had been the 2-time state MVP of Utah. My dad got so much significance out of that. I mean, he was the star pitcher. They won state bowl times, went to BYU and pitched, you know. Sure. And of course, any dad would be so proud of it. Well, he wanted me to kind of have that same success. And he'd heard about this family in Utah, the Pratt brothers, that were like the best players. And they had been held back a year. And you can hold them back if it's in 8th grade. Once you start your clock in 9th grade, you're kind of screwed.
Right.
So he put all this pressure on me to get held back. But I was like one of the older kids.
He wanted you to be held back?
Yeah, so I'd be better at baseball. So I'd be a star at baseball. It was the only reason.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to. I had the best group of friends. I was like pretty smart kid. I was older. I'm like, and he had my brothers trying to convince me. He offered me a car, money, all this stuff. Like, it was crazy. The pressure of a 14-year-old.
To be held back.
Yeah. And so I remember one day we're sitting in his truck, and he's like, all right, you got to give me the answer. We got to know if you're doing it. And I looked at him and I said, I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. And like, I'm so proud of him. I was kind of a little stubborn ass, you know, but I didn't want to. I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't do much I don't want to do. And he looked me dead in the eyes and goes, okay, just so you know, you're not good enough. You'll never play baseball again. Now, I was going to prove him wrong. So I wrote under my hat for 3 years playing baseball. I ended up having a great baseball career. But I wrote, you're not good enough. Now, as an adult, I haven't thought of this hat in 20 years, right? But knowing the power of words and affirmations, the damage I did to myself to write you're not good enough and read that every day, all day. And so in this, my first journey, about halfway through the night, I'm sitting there and I see my hat and I see what I wrote. I hadn't thought of that hat in 20 years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I was like, oh my God. And it, like, immediately I just understood myself so well, because I was the guy, dude, I've been on over 1,200 first dates, like, true story. My next book is titled, It Was Me All Along, What I Learned About Love After 1,000 First Dates. It's my journey to self-love. And like, I would post a picture on Instagram with a girl at the football game in the morning and at the fair that night with another girl. Like, I didn't get it. I was trying to prove that I was worthy of love. I was enough, right? And it made me when I was a missionary, I was the highest baptizing missionary in the entire mission, broke records left and right. When I was in real estate, by year number 2, I was one of the 2 finalists for Salesperson of the Year on the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. Like, it served me in a lot of ways, right?
Sure, yeah.
It really did a lot of amazing things. And in that moment, the voice came to me and it said, Jimmy, this has served you. It no longer does. Let it go. And I was just like, shit. And I just got it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then it was like, hey, your dad carries a lot of pain from this too. Go release him. Now, I don't recommend calling your very Mormon dad when you're high for the first time in a journey at 10 p.m.
That same night?
I did. So I called him immediately. And they told us to stay off our phones, but I'm like, no, it's telling me I need to do this. So like, I was feeling into it. I'm like, so I go in the bathroom so no one else would see me, you know?
Yeah.
And I called my dad and he's just like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, hey, Dad. And what had happened is my dad And 95% of the time, I got to kind of explain this real quick. My dad was the best dad.
Yeah.
5%, I wish, one of the biggest draws I have to doing my coaching group is this is what my dad needed. You know, my dad didn't miss a single important moment in my life, but I didn't need him at every game. I needed him getting into a group like this where he could do some heavy work, and he just never had a place. And so he made some bad mistakes. He cheated on my mom and did some things. You know, he could be a little abusive and stuff. And so, but he was a great dad, like 95% of the time. But I have multiple siblings to this day don't talk to him.
Really?
And so, so he's missed out on a lot.
Everyone handles it very
Every
differently.
family party, he's not there, right? And it's been 10 years of that at this time when I make this phone call.
Got it.
And so I said, Dad, I didn't know what I was going to say when I called him. I just knew I had to call my dad. And so I'm like, Dad, I know you beat yourself up a lot over the things you did wrong, but I got to tell you, like, I love my life, Dad. And a lot of it's because of the way you raised me. So I just want you to know, like, if you're going to keep beating yourself up over the things you did wrong, you got to give yourself credit for everything you did right.
Wow.
And he just lost it. He just bawling. He said, I did the best I could. I said, I know, Dad. And it was enough. Like, I love my life. Thank you. And from that day forward, we just had the best relationship. That was my first journey. Like, that was just like from night one.
That's incredible, man.
And it literally changed everything. From that, I changed the whole energy with my dad. It changed my the way I went about. Everything I did before was out of fear. Now everything I got to do was out of love. Like, that was just my first night. I'm like, how do I not share this with everybody I know? So I'm pretty open about it, which in my community, I've gotten a lot of kickback, right? And
how I was about to ask, because in my experience, what I have found, because I've had those kind of profound moments while on those, the difficulty is expressing it to your group outside of your experience and trying to use words. Because when you are in a setting where you are using some kind of a psychedelic,
your ego's out of the way.
But trying to express the feelings and the changes and what happens to you in that state, whether you're with other people you love or if you're by yourself, it's almost impossible to try to then convey that to someone after the fact.
So I think part of the genius of the medicine, because it gives you what you need, not what you want. We all know this always, right? I think part of its genius is it can't be explained. It has to be experienced.
Yes.
It's like falling in love. You can't buy that.
No.
That's why rich guys get in trouble all the time. They try to. You can't. You either put the effort in and you get the experience and she falls in love, or you don't. Like, you can't buy certain things in life. And with that experience, it can't be explained. You have to experience ayahuasca. You have to experience those journeys of what they are. And so what I've done is I've just shared, with the men. And honestly, it's not for everybody. I also believe that. So I've introduced my guys to some of the legal things. Hape, which is a very powerful tool. I've introduced them to cacao ceremonies where we get to heart openers and things like that. There's
lion's mane. There's a few different...
we haven't done any of that. I've just done the stuff that I knew would help them open their heart. And we've had some amazing breakthroughs with the guys. But they all know where to go if they want to get a facilitator that wants to help them with anything else. And so about half my group wants nothing to do with it, and we don't care. No one cares. The other half, though, are using it as a tool to help them. And so it just, that's the way I've kind of introduced it to my group.
A big indication of how it's going to impact you is why you go into it. What is your reason for actually doing this experience? We had a guy on here. We had a religious experts guy. He studies cults, and we were talking about it. And he was sort of on the opposite side of the aisle, which I love, because then I get to sort of banter with someone on this. And it's, as you well know, it's not hard to find people who disagree with your use of psychedelics. Right. Most people don't like them. It is very, very important to understand why you're going into this experience prior to going into it. And that's what I say. He was using the example that some of these people, they experience these very dark forces. They end up in a worse place than they were before they got in. And I then sort of counter and say, well, okay, why were they going into this? Were they going in it to try to meet some God or try to connect with a deity? Because that's not, for me, that's not my reason for ever going down that kind of a road. I want to work something out with myself personally. I want to actually get a little creative. I want to write. I want to do something like that. But it's very hard to explain also because it's very subjective. Everyone has different experiences, all based on you. No one has the exact same experience. We could do the exact same amount of shrooms from the same type of plant, and we would probably have a different experience.
We would, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, I have this thing where it's like, if I tell people if it's not a hell yes, it's still a hell no. And that's the best way I can explain it to people. I'm like, if you're not absolutely sure you want to do it, don't do it.
It's not bad. Yeah.
And then once you get there, then
you did it and it wasn't a hell yes, right? I mean,
by the time I did it.
By the time you did it, you were 100%. Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I had really done my work. I leaned into it. I knew exactly, like, I went there knowing 100% I want to do this. Like,
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, with my friends, I mean, I've had multiple friends that were suicidal that are not anymore. I've had so many people get over abuse issues or trauma issues. And
you mentioned addiction. That's a big part of it. Yeah. I know a lot of people that it's helped with that.
Jordan Belfort had a cool post today on his Instagram about Ibogaine. There's a center down in Cancun. I mean, if you have somebody that's on opioids, it is a 1 day. I mean, it's going to be the worst day of your life, but you go on to Ibogaine and you're probably going to be sober from that, or very likely.
Is it a detox facility?
No, it's Ibogaine's very similar to like an ayahuasca thing, but it's a plant medicine. And when you do it, it resets all your receptors. You no longer have the addiction to opioids. There's a center in Cancun that does it legally. Sorry.
Do you not still experience the withdrawals from the
opioid?
Yeah,
personally, but that's what they say. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I've never heard. What's it called?
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine. I've never heard of that one. There's so many. It's crazy. There's not just one or two. There's so many different.
That's the other thing. It's like, people that don't understand these things. Like, I've studied it intently. I've really tried to understand all these different things. I've had a lot of the experts on my podcast.
Anyone you would recommend? Any person to listen to if someone is considering?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, I'm on this board called Unlimited Sciences, and it's a nonprofit. We're trying to help do the funding for studies to legalize psychedelics.
Yeah.
And on our board is Jake Plummer, former quarterback that went to Arizona State.
I was about to say, yeah.
He's on the board with us.
Get out of here.
Rashad Evans, UFC Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Justin Wren, who Fight for the Forgotten. He's UFC. He's been on Rogan 9 times.
Yeah, he has.
Drew from Satsang, if you've ever heard of Drew McManus. Satsang's a band. It's a national touring band.
I haven't.
You heard of the song I Am?
Maybe.
Listen to it.
Okay.
It's like, it'll become your favorite song. It's so
cool.
Yeah, it's just one of those songs. It's cultish because it's so damn good. But anyway, and then there's some other guys on that board as well. There's a guy named Brian Murarascu, if you've heard of him. He wrote The Immortality Key, which he was on Rogan talking about it. And
gotcha.
It's all about how the Greeks and Romans used psychedelics.
Yeah.
It's like,
it predates even them. It goes all the way back to the Nordic. I mean, the Vikings used it.
He wrote this very thick book talking all about it, and the whole thing. And there's a few other people on there, but so cool thing. What we got to do is, as a group, we did a ayahuasca 2 nights in a row as a group.
Wow!
It was just this powerful, like, amazing group of humans, right? I remember at one point, because I remember when I was in college watching Rashad Evans knock out Chuck Liddell, and it was the nastiest punch I've ever seen in my life. I was like, that's the greatest knockout ever.
I remember it. Yeah.
I mean, up to that point, Chuck Liddell was untouchable.
Yeah, no one ever hit him.
No. And I'm sitting there puking my guts out in ayahuasca, and Rashad had volunteered that day to just be a helper. So I'm literally puking my guts, and I feel this hand on my back, and just rub my back, and he's like, brother, you're doing fine, man. You're good. And I'm just like, I had this moment in my throat of like, what is my life? This is the craziest shit. I have Rashad Evans, this guy that I've seen literally is one of the baddest men in the world, and he's comforting me while I throw up in this random ass teepee in the middle of
jungle.
Colorado. I'm sitting across from Jake Plummer, who I watched beat Nebraska and carry off the freaking field goal post when he was in college. And the whole thing was just wild. And it's just one of those moments where it's like, it's why I have this theory in life. I don't ever, all pain in life comes from unmet expectations. And we all have this idea of what our life's supposed to be. And where pain comes is when that isn't met. And I would have screwed up my life so bad if I had to plan it out 10 years ago, what it would be today. It would be so much less than what I've been able to have.
Sure.
And I'm just like so grateful. So every time something happens, I've gotten to this point where in the middle of the moment, the bad thing, I literally can be like, well, this is fun. We'll see where this takes it. Because it's so much more beautiful than I ever could have imagined.
That's awesome.
And it's so much wildly different than anything I ever could. I couldn't have, literally, I would have never been able to come up with it. It's just, and so I have these little moments all the time. We had one, I'll tell you one real quick. Recently, one of my men's groups, we did a breathwork session. Yeah. And if you've done heavy breath work, I mean, all the emotions come up, right? And I have the guys share afterwards, and, everyone's crying, and there's really beautiful moments with these men, 50 guys in a room doing breath work. And in fact, Samantha Skelly was the one that guided us. I don't know if you know who she is. She's like the most famous breathwork girl in the world. I met her at a Tony Robbins event in Fiji, and so we're friends, and I had her come in and do it. And one of the guys in our group, as we're sharing, I see him in the back, and I could tell he's kind of nervous to get up, but he's feeling a lot of emotion. So I call on him to come up. And he comes up, and he just breaks down crying. He says, I got a confession to make you guys. Yesterday, halfway through the event, I went out to my car and put a gun to my head. And we're all just like, okay. And he's bawling, and he says, 6 years ago, my wife, who's now his wife, got pregnant. Sorry, 6 years ago he got pregnant, had a baby. 4 years ago, she got pregnant again, and he convinced her to get an abortion, and basically gaslit her and made it seem like it was her fault. And he says, I've never been able to forgive myself. I've been suicidal every day since because I'm such a shitty person. I cheated on her. I did all these things. And he said, I've never been able to forgive myself. And it's just every day I deal with this. Every day I'm fighting, wanting to kill myself because of this. He said, in that breathwork session, I was able to talk to that child that we aborted and like make peace with this. And he's just bawling. And he's like, this is the first time I know I'm going to be okay. And I tell that and get the chills talking about it. And then all 50 dudes are coming. We're all bawling. We're all hugging him and having this crazy moment. And I remember just sitting there as this is happening, and it like, and I've had like 10 of these since I launched my men's group, but it's like every decision I made, because when you're growing, you don't know if you're making the right decision. You're trying your best. You don't know where life's going. And so many times, especially in my path, because it was not what it was supposed to look like. Like I took a hard right, you know, like I was very religious. And it was just this perfect moment where it was just validated everything I've ever done, because that was a perfect moment of life. It was like a perfect moment in time. And it was just like, Jimmy, you did it. Like you did your life right. Like you've created this thing now that gets to have moments like this. And we've had so many of them. And it was just this beautiful feeling of just like comfort of just knowing I did my life right. And you
did your bucket list item. You saved a guy's life.
Again,
I mean,
right?
that's incredible.
But it was really beautiful, man. I just like, you know, it's just one of those moments I'll never forget. We've had so dozens of them in my group.
Wow.
Anyway, powerful stuff.
That's incredible, bro. This has been, I think, the most emotional and powerful episode that I think I've ever been a part of. So thank you, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, for coming on and telling us your story and what you're doing and everything. It's just incredible. Again, just to end this, I mean, where would people go to be a part of this? If they want to get into this?
Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex.
Okay.
In my like header or whatever, it has the website of the Weird That They website.
Okay.
But just when I open it, you'll see it in my stories and my posts. And would love to have. I mean, my goal is to get to 2,000 men by the end of the year, and that's where we're going with it. I just hired Ed Milet. He's my one-on-one coach for the rest of the year. And he's mentoring me. Yeah, so he loves what we're doing, and he's personally mentoring me to get it there. And he keeps just introducing me to all of his people, and I know that's where we're going because it's needed. There's nothing else like it out there. I mean, it truly is a place where men feel safe to just be them and connect and get this deep connection.
And women.
And women.
And women,
yeah, of course.
True as well. Yeah. No, this is exciting. I'm going to be a part of this someday.
Dude, come join us.
I seriously would love it. This is outstanding.
Yeah.
This is really good stuff. Jimmy, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.